right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Passive Cash Flow Podcast. I'm your host, AaronFragnito. We have an exciting guest with us today. How are we doing today, Sarry?
Hey, Aaron, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. I want to have you on the podcast here because you are in a similar space as me, helping people invest in real estate, working with infinite banking and using life insurance policies to kind of turn $1 into 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? As many dollars as possible, avoid paying taxes, and just guiding people overall with their wealth and direction and investments. And so I want to have you on the show here so we can kind of share our thoughts from years of doing this together and what we've learned. But how's your day going over there so far?
So far, so good. It's the middle of winter here in Chicago, and similar. I think you're in New Jersey, right? So similar weather. We have snow. It's like 5 degrees right now. So dealing with Chicago weather right now. Yeah,
it doesn't get that cold in Jersey. I actually used to live in Vermont, so I'm used to real cold, So now when it's like 30, people are shivering here. I'm like, nah, guys, this is a spring day. It's like, that's like May in Vermont, So Chicago's a little colder than us, but that's all good, my friend. Windy city there.
Yeah.
Definitely. But so talk a little bit about what you do with your company there.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a company called Financial Asset Protection. So we're a financial services firm. We do like financial planning, strategies, asset protection through like some of our attorney referrals. And a lot of our focus is for real estate professionals, like real estate agents, real estate brokers, and a lot of syndication, general partners and limited partners of syndication. And then that also brought us to the podcast, Thinking Like a Bank podcast. And our podcast is heavily focused on like applying banking principles in your everyday life. So not necessarily like for the actual banking profession as a career, but more so like you're a real estate investor, you're a business owner, you want to think of like different creative ways of accessing capital, like lowering your taxes. Like check out our podcast, Thinking Like a Bank podcast, because that's exactly what we talk about on a podcast. And that's also like the brand we're building, like the Thinking Like a Bank brand is really like, not just think like a real estate investor or think like a business owner, but really like think like a bank, like apply some of those strategies and principles in your life, to kind of excel your revenue, lower your taxes, increase your net worth, and so on.
At People's Capital Group, we help you invest in real estate. Build your wealth by owning professionally managed apartment buildings in the northern New Jersey market. We want to show you how owning real estate is attainable, even for the busy professionals that don't have the time or experience investing in real estate. Now, we only work with select people who are serious about building wealth. So find out if you qualify at peoplescapitalgroup.com. Absolutely. It's amazing how banks operate. If you really think about it, it's a little bit of a Ponzi scheme because they actually take your money and lend it out to other people and then charge interest. And then if they run out of money, they just need to get more deposits of other people's money. And then Seth and I always joke, if we ran our business like a bank, we'd be in jail, right? Because we're not allowed to do that. So, but I digress. Of course, we love banks. We work with banks to buy all of our assets, and it's a great partnership that we have with banks. In fact, you could argue they're our most important investor because they bring the majority of the capital to buy properties, of course. So that's interesting though. Think Like a Bank podcast, great title. But how does one go about thinking like a bank?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of have like these steps, right? It's like, and it falls in line with our financial planning steps. So it's like kind of, this is not like a hard rule, but like step number one, like know your financials, like know your numbers like really well, like how much you make, how much you spend, what your current assets are, where your current investments are, projected internal rates of return. And it sounds a little bit like daunting to go through all of that. For some people, especially high net worth people, like that's going to be a lot of work to do. But we kind of created this like personal financial tracker that you can go through. It takes like 5 minutes a day, 5 to like 10 minutes a day of going through, and you can kind of list out your assets, your cash flow, your expenses, and things like that. And what really happens from this is like it makes it into like a game where it's like you're understanding your numbers really well. And a lot of times, I was reading this book called Deep Work, and the book is awesome because it talks about how people over exaggerate their mental accounting, like the numbers. Like, oh, I made 300,000 last year. I spent about 200,000, invested 100,000, and those numbers are usually like way off.
Right.
They're just going based off their memory. And I think like solid accounting and like really emphasize into your numbers is crucial because it makes it more logical and it makes your decisions more accurate. So that's kind of the first layer. And
Yeah.
then after that, it's really understanding like how a bank operates. Like, as you mentioned, I love how you mentioned like a kind of Ponzi scheme, not really actually a Ponzi scheme there,
Right.
like licensed FDIC insured bank, but really you are right in the sense that when you go to a bank and like, let's just say you borrow $1,000 from a bank, it's not like they have a vault behind them and they're gonna go take out $1,000 and give it to you. The
Right.
reality is those are probably other people's deposits
Mhm.
and money from the Federal Reserve. So they're using other people's money to loan you money, and they're essentially the real definition of a bank is it's like a conduit or like a bridge. Like they connect somebody who wants money with somebody who has money, and that's it. Think of
Right.
like a blood bank, right? Like somebody's blood, somebody's giving blood, somebody's taking blood.
Sure.
It's just like a bridge. So applying those same thinking principles in your business can help amplify your business.
Mhm.
Same is true like this. I see this a lot with real estate investors where I interview a lot of general partners who have syndications, and a lot of them talk about the same stories. It's fascinating. Like, I wanted to get into real estate. I bought one property. It was a big deal. I fixed it up. I sold it. I kind of broke even. And I was like, how are people getting rich off this? And then they started learning about multifamily syndications and self-storage. And now they're expanding their horizon. They're expanding their minds by bringing on more people. And it's not just the real estate investor making more money. It's also their investors making more money, right?
Yeah.
There's a vehicle for them to place their funds and grow their wealth. So that's kind of the two general parts of like thinking like a bank.
Right, right. No, I love it. I love it. And you're absolutely right. We all do this, and I'm guilty of this too. But I talk to investors all the time, and some even the most savvy investors, it's really easy to overestimate what you're making on an investment.
Yeah.
Because I often talk to people, and the conversation goes like, yeah, I own a property. I own a 3-family property. I get $4,000 a month in rent from the property, and my mortgage is $2,000, so I'm making $2,000 in cash flow on it, a month, and so if I make an investment with you, I want to make $2,000 a month in cash flow. And I say, okay, well, that's good. So, do you also pay taxes? Do you have property tax? Yeah. Okay. Oh, do you have insurance? Oh, yeah. Do you have maintenance? Anything ever break on the property now and then? Yeah. Okay. Do you ever have to get the lawn cut, or like, does it snow, and get oh yeah, we have a guy that goes and does that, okay. And then, we kind of work our way down the numbers and without rubbing in their face, of course, we kind of gently come to the conclusion that they're actually not making 2,000 out of the 4,000 a month. They're making maybe more like 400 or 500, at the end of the day. And so now still that's not bad. It's always good. A few $100s a month on a 3-family is pretty much what you would expect here, at least in North Jersey. But everyone does that, and I do that myself, right? And the kind of underestimating expenses as well sometimes, right? Yeah, my mortgage is this and that, and my lifestyle costs this much. What do I have? A car payment, a house payment. My wife blows $1,000 on Amazon. Okay, okay, well, yeah. So what's my expenses? 400 or 5,000 a month, and then it's like 8, and you're like, what happened? And
Exactly.
start yelling at your wife. That's not good for your marriage. So yeah, that is something we all do. And it's really interesting you bring that up. So it's smart to be thinking more and actually write it down, right? Because at the end of the day, money is quite simple. It's dollars and cents. You write it down. It's a bottom number thing. And that's why a lot of people have a problem with it. Because if your personality is more like sociable type B, not so much type A, spreadsheets and numbers and bottom lines kind of scare you or like turn you off. It's funny because I'm a type B guy, but I'm totally have to be in the bottom. When you're running a business, you got to be type A and B depending on the time of day. Sometimes you're both at the same time. So but it's really incredible that scares people. Writing down numbers, getting to the bottom line, having to record your expenses. It's kind of like having to write down what you eat, and change your diet. It's a very personal thing. And so when you work with people on the front, you want to understand it's a personal thing you're asking them to do. But that's a great way to guide people. It sounds like you've had a lot of success with that.
Yeah, definitely. And we made it so simple. Like, you're right. Most people are not going to have spreadsheets and all these financial trackers. It's usually outside of their scope, outside of their expertise. And it's also like, it's kind of a very mundane, boring thing to do, right? So we made it very simple where it's like there's no thinking at all involved. It's just kind of like you're just every day logging into this tracker and then seeing what your like bank account is, what like your projected value to be in the real estate deal you're in, and then just lays it out every day. And again, I do this every day. Like, I do this probably 5-6 days a week. Sometimes I miss a day or two, but it's like going to the gym. It's like you're constantly doing it, and then you start learning more about yourself. And then
Right.
you're surprised, like, you know what, actually I'm a good saver, or actually I need to figure out a way to save, or whatever. You start to learn more about yourself. And
Mhm.
these behavioral traits you have a big effect on your entrepreneurial goals. Like
Mhm.
if you can't save a dollar, you're going to have a very hard time running a business, because businesses are not always profitable. They don't always cash flow. So you need to figure out a way where it's like, if your business expenses are 5,000 this month, but you made 3,000, which is very common in business. How are you going to fill in that $2,000 gap? Well, okay, I'll have to get financing for that, or I have to tap into reserves, or I have to be able to raise money or borrow money or whatever. Like, you need to have those vehicles or those positions available to you.
Mhm.
And again, behavioral trends within your savings have a big impact on how successful you become as an entrepreneur. So you see a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they're really good at saving. And I think that's a very general term to say, like, being good at saving. I think it's more of, you know how to allocate money, you know where money goes. Another thing too that I've noticed is having like forced saving strategies is a really smart thing to do for people, because if you have the flexibility of putting money in a checking account and then conveniently moving into a savings account, and then conveniently taking out of a savings account and then putting it in your checking and then spending it, a lot of people do that. It becomes harder to save. But what if you had this savings account where, like, you put like $500 a month into it, and it's only like one way, like money goes into it only.
Right.
And then if you want money out, like, you have to go through like 2 or 3 hoops to get it. Then you're more likely to keep the money there because it's a hassle to come out, and you're
Yeah.
more likely to keep putting money into it because it's automatic and coming out every month. So we have, again, thinking like a bank, we're applying we're taking away the human behavior out of these and
Mhm.
just placing in like logical trends to increase your savings, and of course unlock those savings to invest in real estate deals and to really compound your money every year.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you're absolutely right. And I make that mistake too. I cashed out. I mean, I'm always cashing out of real estate deals. That's primarily how I'm paying myself, through refinance of assets or sale of assets. So, last year I had a couple of good exits on some properties,
Mhm.
and I was quite flush. And I said, let me get into this crypto game that all my friends are talking about. My buddy was a school teacher. He literally was like about to quit his job because he did so well in crypto. He bought like a bunch way early on and like crushed it. But he never sold. And now I'm worried about him. I think he's depressed. So I gotta call him. He's like really depressed. It's sad. Yeah, it's tough because people put their life savings into that
Yeah.
crap, and now look at them. And so I was such a fool. Here I am investing in brick and mortar assets, producing good returns in real estate, coming out of some really nice investments, very profitably, and thinking, oh, I need to diversify. Where should I put a lot of this cash? Here, cryptocurrency, something I know nothing about, a completely volatile market, investing at the top of it. And of course I got soaked. So I still, I didn't sell any, I still have it, but it just goes to show, like, if I didn't sell those assets and I didn't refi, if that money just stayed in real estate, it would have been better off than me ever touching it,
Yeah.
and it was an attempt to diversify. Most of my wealth is in real estate, so I
Yeah.
am trying to diversify a little bit outside real estate, although I'm a huge, obviously, real estate fan.
Yeah.
So most of my wealth does go back into our opportunities and things like that. But it was really incredible. If we take the money off the table, and all of a sudden now we're the financial advisor, now we're the wealth advisor, that's a recipe for disaster. And here I was thinking I was like smarter than someone else, just knowing that, is an opportunity, that no one else could. Well, everyone was talking about it, right? That's why it didn't really work out. That's why it was a bubble, right? But we're not, with your own money, you're blinded by your ego. You're
Yeah.
blinded by, oh, I did really well on an investment, I must know what I'm doing. Yes, I know what I'm doing in real estate, not in cryptocurrency, not even in the stock market, right? If I
Yeah.
was to go invest in the stock market with the funds, I would have probably just parked it in a mutual fund or something
Mhm.
like that, or possibly called up some of the stockbrokers I know and been a little more aggressive in some ways. But, I'm really not going to go out and pick stocks. It's not what I do.
Mhm.
So and here I am getting confused that, I made all this money in real estate, so I must be an overall good wealth and investor just in all asset classes. But we couldn't be further from the truth. So by not being able to touch that money, I
Mhm.
get that completely. That's
Yeah.
an interesting strategy,
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because when you look at investing in like syndications, like, just to be transparent, right? One of the downsides to investing in real estate is that it's not liquid. Like, if you put $100,000 in a property, you can't call the next day and get it out. Most of the time, you can't do that. But I think that's actually an advantage, Because
Right.
imagine if you had all this money tied up and then everybody was able to just to sell their positions like you can on like Robinhood with stocks, it's going to decrease the value of that asset dramatically if everyone was able to get their money out of it. So by everyone joining together and locking up their money and waiting 3 to 5 years until that exit, that's where you can see real returns. And again, it's for the advantage of it. There's a reason why you can't just put money into and take money out. There's loans, there's renovations happening, value add going on. So I completely get that. And I like that kind of forced saving where the money's already been deployed. It's already, now if I need more money, I go and work or sell more, whatever I'm doing to get that money, not necessarily liquidate an asset. I think that keep that asset moving, keep it growing. It's working, right? It's gonna take a couple of years to see the results of it, but just let that grow and then go out and do whatever else you're doing, like your actual W-2 job or your active self-employment where you're actually making money day to day. Keep that growing so that way you're kind of forced to keep making money and keep saving more money.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. And that's why I like our investments as well. It does force people to invest long term.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I'll talk to a very savvy investor with maybe 7 figures or so to put to work. And their question is, how long can I, well, it depends on the investor, right? But how long can I put my capital to work with you, right? Because if it's a short period of time, then they're in, they're out, then they got to go find another opportunity. They may have to pay capital gains tax on a quick investment that cashes out very quickly. So, the more savvy investors say, how long can I keep my capital earning this, right? Just like if you go to the bank for a CD right now, an 18-month or a 12-month CD is 4%. An 18-month CD is like 1.5%. A 6-month CD is like 1.8. So it's really interesting. It's like the sweet spot with CDs. You can do a 12-month, but you can't lock that in for 3 years. If you want to do a 3-year CD, it's like 1%, right? But if you want to do a 12-month, it's all of a sudden 4%, which is really, interesting. And that's because, the time value of money also where the rates are expected to go and so on.
Yeah.
But good investors, savvy investors say, how long can I keep my capital at work so I don't have to go find a new home for it, right? A new place to invest. And less savvy investors say, how fast can I get my money back? Oh, taxes, I don't care. That I don't care. How fast can I get it back? And if that's your mindset and you're that nervous about the investment or the operator, then don't invest in them because if you're thinking, as soon as the money leaves your pocket, if you're thinking, when can I get that back? You're not thinking about money the right way. Money is a tool. When I see my money sitting in my checking account, puts a little smile on my face. But when I see it there a month later, if I don't have a place to put it, which, I always do being a real estate investor, but then that makes me unhappy too, right? So when I see my cash just laying around, it irks me, which is a good kind of subconscious understanding of how money works, where when I see it at work and I see the returns coming in, that's what really makes me satisfied,
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if that money is sitting in your bank account, it's losing to inflation. And then plus you're losing the opportunity cost you could have earned had that money been invested, somewhere else. So like if a couple of years, I'm sure a couple of years won't pass by with you not investing in, but let's just say a couple of years pass by. Theoretically, you could have maybe doubled that money, right? In like 3 or 5 years, and depending on the real estate deal. I think that's pretty normal, right? To double your money in 5 years in real estate as a limited partner or as a general partner. So that money could have been double. So I definitely get that by not leaving the money in the bank account. I think it's just like maybe for emergency funds, like immediate emergency funds, and then also just as like a vehicle to put money into and pay your bills out of, but like very short term with a bank account then as opposed to investing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's switch gears for a second here. So let's talk about life insurance, right? Do things are for certain death and taxes. So life insurance is a way to kind of recognize both of those headwinds and get ready for them. So you do the infinite banking right now. I've had a couple podcast episodes a little while ago about infinite banking, high cash value life insurance policies, right? There's lots of different names for it. What exactly is that?
Yeah, it's exactly said. It's high cash value whole life insurance. So like for those who have no idea what infinite banking is or haven't heard any of the other podcasts on it, it's essentially a whole life insurance policy, and it has 2 parts to it. It has life insurance, like the title of it, and then it has cash value in it. And the cash value in it could be used very similar to like a savings account, except the difference is it's like 30 times the interest you would get in the savings account compared to a whole life policy.
Mhm.
And you could use the whole life policy to invest in real estate, to just grow cash, to actually be your source of retirement income for anything you want. So that's essentially what infinite banking is. It's using cash value whole life insurance for self-banking purposes, for you becoming your own banker,
Mhm.
you accessing the money, using it for whatever you want. And in doing so, there's some broad benefits like tax benefits,
Mhm.
liquidity benefits, and I think like a risk, of course, risk benefits. So like
Yeah. Yeah.
you're hedging against risk by using these policies. So that's kind of like generally why people do infinite banking and how you can use it for real estate investing.
Okay, very cool. And the whole idea is you can kind of put a lot of cash into it,
Mhm.
overfund the policy from day one. Say you put $100,000 into the policy or something, and pretty much be able to pull about 80% of that or so out within the next 30 days or so. Is that how the product works?
Precisely, yeah, exactly. You're right. So you could put 100,000 in, take out 80,000, use that to invest in like real estate or somewhere else, and then when you do that, you actually borrow against the asset. So your whole life policy becomes it's like its own asset, right? It has a market value, it has its own asset. And then when you take out the money out, you're borrowing against the asset. Same thing if you have real estate, you borrow against it. You're not interrupting the market value of that property. Same thing here. You're borrowing against it. So the value of your asset keeps growing. It actually guarantees to keep growing. There's a contractual agreement that it keeps growing even when you have money borrowed against it. So
Mhm.
now what you're able to do is use one asset to fund another asset to fund another asset and so on. It
Mhm.
keeps growing. And then it becomes like this arbitrage. Arbitrage is where you borrow from the policy, you use that money that you borrowed to invest somewhere, for example, and then you still have to pay interest on that money you borrowed from the insurance company. But there's an arbitrage, meaning that the money that grew in the policy outpaced what you paid to borrow that money.
Yeah.
There was a spread, like you borrowed at X and then you earned Y, and then Y was greater than X. So like there was a spread between that. And again, this is thinking like a bank, right?
Mhm.
Banks borrow from point A and they sell at point B, and there's like a spread between there.
Right.
So that's kind of what you can use. One of the ways you can use infinite banking is you can use it for your real estate deals. Instead of just taking money out of like a checking account and then investing into a real estate syndication, you could take money out of the whole life policy, invest in a real estate syndication. And then when that deal closes or exits, then you could take that money and then repay that loan and then recycle that process again. Or you can use the distributions you get from the real estate deal to pay the policy loan back over time, mixed with like your W-2 income or other sources of income, and then repeat that process again. So there's a lot of many creative things you can do with this.
Right. And then you have the death policy, of course. Now, let's say you have $100,000 death policy. You pull out $80,000 against the
Mhm.
uh the um a whole life policy there, and then let's say you pass away. Is the death policy 100 minus that 80, or is it still $100,000 death policy? Not
So
benefit.
so it depends on a couple of things. So let's just say somebody puts 100,000 and that's their premium going into it. Depending on their age, the life insurance is probably going to be about 4 times that. So their life insurance day one is going to be like about 400,000. Maybe it could be less or more, but let's just use it as an example that it's 400,000.
Right.
And then let's just say they borrowed 80,000, right? And then they died like a month later. Then the insurance company would take 400,000, subtract the outstanding loan. So let's just say 80,000, and then pay out your beneficiary $320,000. So in every situation, it's when somebody passes away, when there's an outstanding loan, it's the total life insurance minus the outstanding loan that goes to the beneficiaries. And the life insurance amount is usually significantly higher than the cash value.
Right.
So it's really in most situations, it's impossible for your loan to exceed what the life insurance will be.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. Wow. So, okay, that's a great tool. I have investors that use that tool. That's
Mhm.
why I enjoy having people on the podcast that can talk about this tool very wisely, as you have here. And it's really a nice marriage with what we do in real estate, because it
Mhm.
creates that long-term wealth security. It creates a great death benefit, of course, for the one thing that is all going to happen to all of us at some point.
Yeah.
And then I love how you can borrow against it, tax free. The growth of the policy covers the cost of that money
Yes.
you're pulling back out. And then the policy continues to grow over time. So
Yeah.
you have another, bucket of wealth growing there. You have a death policy, a death benefit. And then over here, you're using the majority of the cash again to reinvest in income producing assets. And you can kind of just rinse and repeat. It's a great cycle there.
Yeah, exactly. And if we're gonna like, for example, sorry to interrupt you, but if we're gonna compare it to like an IRA, IRAs are really good to invest in real estate too, but there's some downsides. Like one of the downsides being when you invest in an IRA is that you can't touch the money inside it. Like you can invest within the IRA, but you can't take cash out of that until you're 59 and a half. And if you do so before, you have to pay taxes and a 10% tax penalty.
Yeah.
But with the whole life policy, there are no restrictions like that. You can put cash in, take cash out. There's no age requirements. The loans are tax free, the withdrawals are tax free, and then plus when you use an IRA to invest in real estate, that real estate deal has to be passive, right? Like you can't be involved at all in that real estate deal. It has to be entirely passive. With whole life, it could be passive or active, so it doesn't really matter. So there's a lot more control compared to other retirement vehicles out there.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Sarry, really interesting stuff here. I'm really enjoying what we're learning about here. How can people get in touch with you to learn more about what you guys do there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aaron. So they can go to thinkinglikeabank.com. Again, it's thinkinglikeabank.com. They can download our ebook. They can find our podcast, connect with me on LinkedIn, YouTube. Everything is at thinkinglikeabank.com.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show here. I really enjoyed it. And of course, I'm AaronFragnito, co-owner of People's Capital Group. We actually have an event coming up here February 21st in Somerset, New Jersey, the Jersey Cyclone Brewery there. Now, you're not, you're in Chicago, of course. So it's a bit of a hike for you to make it to that one. But we do a new podcast every single week here on the Passive Cash Flow podcast. We also have webinars Thursday at 11 a.m. We go live with those. We team up with different people in the industry and out of the industry. And of course, we always do our in-person events. This will be on the third Tuesday of the month this February because, of course, Valentine's Day, but normally we do them on the second Tuesday of the month. So if you are a follower of our podcast here and you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get our future episodes if you're following us on YouTube or other podcast platforms. And then come to one of our events. They're a lot of fun. We're usually a packed house, 70 to 80 people out there. It's at a brewery, so a ticket includes a free drink there. So it's a good time. We have a lot of fun, and I'll be speaking about the art of the deal this month. So if you're listening to our podcast, check that out. You, of course, can learn more about that at peoplescapitalgroup.com. That's our website, peoplescapitalgroup.com. We can learn about real estate investing and helping people. We help people put their capital to work in real estate. All right. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. And what's your website one more time?
Thank you. It's thinkinglikeabank.com.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Sarry, have a good day, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it.